Two men, born worlds apart, rose to command empires built on fear. One preached purity, conquest, and a destiny of domination. The other ruled through paranoia, executions, and the sacrifice of his own people. Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin. Two monsters of the 20th century. Enemies by ideology, yet mirror images in cruelty. But here's the question that still haunts history. What truly decided the fate of the Second World War? Was it Stalin's iron will? Or was it Hitler's own hatred, an obsession so blinding, it became his downfall? Because sometimes, the deadliest enemy lies not across the battlefield, but inside your own mind. The world of the 1930s balanced on a knife's edge. Germany, humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, was seething with anger. Its economy shattered, its pride broken, its people hungry for revenge. In the East, the Soviet Union staggered under the weight of revolution. Joseph Stalin ruled with fear, unleashing purges, gulags, and secret police that silenced millions. And yet, these two men, seemingly destined to clash, chose for a moment to stand side by side. In 1939, Hitler and Stalin signed a pact to carve Europe like a carcass, slicing Poland in half without a single shot fired between them. For a fleeting moment, it looked as if the continent might be theirs to devour. But history is never simple. Beneath the handshake, distrust festered. And soon, fear turned into hatred. Hatred into war. Hitler looked eastward and saw destiny. To him, the vast lands of Russia were not nations but living space, Lebensraum. A place to conquer, to enslave, to exploit. Stalin, meanwhile, saw Germany with cold calculation. A threat, yes, but also an opportunity. If he could buy time, build strength, and keep Hitler distracted with the West, maybe, just maybe, the Soviet Union could survive. But neither man trusted the other. In Moscow, Stalin unleashed purges that tore through his own army. Generals with decades of experience were dragged into the night, executed or sent to gulags. The Red Army bled from within, gutted by paranoia. In Berlin, Hitler was doing the opposite, arming at a pace Europe had never seen. Tanks, planes, and artillery poured out of factories. His generals warned caution, but Hitler's obsession burned hotter. For him, crushing Bolshevism was not just strategy, it was destiny. Behind closed doors, his rhetoric grew darker, his plans more detailed. Destroy Russia. Enslave its people. Erase its system. And in Stalin's Kremlin, shadows whispered the same fear. The pact cannot last. Two men circling, awaiting. Each convinced the other would blink first. But in truth, the clock was already ticking. The betrayal was not a question of if, but when. June 22, 1941. At dawn, the skies over the Soviet Union roared to life. Hitler had unleashed Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history. 3 million German soldiers. Thousands of tanks. Waves of aircraft that blackened the skies. The Wehrmacht stormed across the border in a torrent of fire and steel. In Moscow, Stalin froze. He refused to believe the reports. After all, hadn't Hitler sworn loyalty to the pact? But reality came crashing in. Entire Soviet armies disintegrated. Millions of men surrounded, captured, or killed in the opening weeks. Cities burned. The Red Army seemed helpless before the German war machine. Across Europe, it looked as if Hitler's gamble would succeed. Even his generals believed victory was within reach. But the German advance carried with it an invisible enemy. An enemy Hitler had ignored. The vastness of the land. The ferocity of the Russian spirit. And the one ally that had humbled conquerors before, the Russian winter. What Hitler saw as his destiny was unraveling into his greatest gamble. And what he dismissed as weakness in Stalin's Soviet Union was about to harden into resistance. His greatest enemy might not be Stalin. It might be his own arrogance. The winter of 1941 struck like a hammer. German tanks froze solid in the snow. Engines refused to start. Soldiers starved, their uniforms no match for the Russian cold. In Moscow, panic spread, yet Stalin refused to flee. He stood before his people and declared with iron resolve, "We will not surrender an inch of our land." And then, the impossible happened. The Red Army counterattacked. From the smoldering ruins of Stalingrad to the thunderous plains of Kursk, Soviet steel slammed into Nazi firepower with unrelenting fury. For the first time, Hitler's armies reeled backward. The myth of the invincible Wehrmacht shattered in the snow. Inside his bunker, Hitler raged. He refused to retreat, demanded his soldiers fight to the last man. And in doing so, condemned millions more to die. The conqueror of Europe was now trapped in the jaws of a war he could no longer control, and the fire he had unleashed was beginning to consume him. By 1945, Soviet troops marched into Berlin. The dream of a 1,000-year Reich had collapsed in just 12. Hitler's obsession with destroying Stalin had blinded him to reality. He underestimated the Soviet Union's capacity to endure, to sacrifice, to fight beyond all human limits. And in the end, fear and hatred consumed him, just as Stalin had predicted. The dictator who once sought to dominate the world died in a bunker, abandoned and broken. But here lies the haunting truth. While Hitler vanished into ash, Stalin emerged victorious. Not as a savior, but as a shadow, stretching his iron grip across half of Europe. The war between two monsters ended not with peace, but with a new empire rising from the ruins. So, who truly won? Hitler lost his life and his empire. Stalin gained power, but at the cost of millions of his own people. So was this a victory? Or just another kind of tragedy written in blood? And here's the chilling thought. What if they had never turned on each other? Would today's world even exist as we know it? Or would it belong to them? History doesn't always give us answers, but it leaves us with questions too dangerous to ignore. Fade to black. Suspenseful music swells. On-screen text. What if history had taken another path? Segue to next video teaser.